All right, good morning. My name is Jeff Warrock here at the National Weather Service office in Wakefield. Going to run through the weather here for this week, basically running from April 13th to about April 19th, get us through this week and next weekend. Have some of the highlights up here. What we're talking about as we go through the briefing. The main thing is obviously going to be the continued hot and dry conditions. And in fact, we have an increased fire danger statement out today, basically for some gusty winds, some dry conditions with low humidity. So we'll talk about that. And then really we're turning almost right into summer this week with some near record highs coming for a good part of this week. The drought continues to expand, and with some of the breezy conditions off and on, there could be some small craft advisories. Right now we do have some for the bay right now, and we'll see if we have a little bit more small craft advisory conditions later on this week. But winds aren't expected to be very bad, maybe just borderline small craft advisory type conditions. Just kind of jumping right into it. And I'll tell you what, before we get into the weather maps, we'll kind of just look at what's going on out there right now. So just kind of looking at the satellite, you see some clouds well to our west, basically west of the mountains, and to our north. There was an old front up here that kind of washed out. And so you're seeing a little bit more cloud cover to our north, but generally all of us here over most of Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, other than just some passing clouds, which is making it look kind of hazy, kind of a milky sunshine kind of moving across. That's kind of what we're going to see for today, but no real shower activity there. Some of the models are showing that there could be an isolated sprinkle maybe here. I say north of 64. It's probably basically keying in on the cloud cover. Some of the models are probably overdoing some of those isolated showers. So really not expecting any kind of shower activity today, just maybe some of this milky sunshine, and we may actually see more clearing as the afternoon goes on. We'll see, but that's kind of what's going on there on satellite. As far as just looking at some of the temperatures this morning, and let's see if this gets over here. So let that update. So yeah, we're warming up pretty good. Everybody's pretty much in the 70s, almost getting into the upper 70s in a few places, especially, I'd say, along and south of 64, but even out here in the mountains, starting to see 70-degree readings, and over northern Virginia as well. So, some of the clouds may be kind of inhibiting the temperatures a teeny bit, but it's going to be a very warm day, seasonally warm. As far as looking at the wind gusts, since we're kind of keeping an eye on the winds as well, it's not too breezy. You see some wind gusts there, about anywhere from 20 to 25 miles per hour, depending on where you are. So it's just these wind gusts today combined with the lower humidity. That's what we're kind of watching out for. You do see more wind on the eastern shore, obviously, with wind gusts here about solid 25 miles per hour, 20 to 25 across the eastern shore and down into southeast Virginia, closer to the bay and the water. The humidity is a little bit higher there, and so the fire danger is not quite as great, but we've all been dry for some time. So we got to be careful a little bit with these ignition sources, just realizing how breezy we are and the fact that things are getting pretty warm and we're remaining pretty dry. But that's where we are right now for today. Just kind of looking ahead, we'll take a look at our fronts. I'll just kind of step through here using the Weather Prediction Center's website. So you see here for this afternoon, they were painting maybe a very, very low chance of maybe a sprinkle or a shower here, where you see the green across northern and western Virginia. Most of that's probably just hot as cloud cover. I don't know if we're really going to see any sprinkles. We'll see. Is an old front that's kind of washed out across the area. One thing you do notice is that you have the high pressure kind of here offshore, and actually an area low pressure way up here north of Maine. And you see more of these, we call them isobars, these the pressure gradient that is a little bit tighter here across the mid-Atlantic. And that's why the southwest wind today is just a little bit, maybe it was breezy yesterday. It's going to continue to be maybe a little bit gusty to 15 to 25 miles per hour today. And that's why we have that increased fire danger statement. This evening, really not much change, high pressure offshore. You get into tomorrow morning, and what you do notice, the lines aren't as tight across Virginia. The pressure gradient is not as strong. We've kind of lost the low pressure to the north, and the high pressure to the south is kind of taking control. And so that's why we're not expecting as much wind. But there's no breeze really for the next couple of days after today. So the fire danger, even though it's going to be hot and dry, we're not going to have the wind. So the fire danger will probably be a little bit less once we get past today, just because this pressure gradient is just going to be pretty weak. And so that's the Tuesday weather pattern, just warm, high pressure. I'm in control. Go here to Wednesday, you're not going to see much of a difference. Everything's being kind of the high pressure here off the East Coast, the Bermuda High, is really keeping everything, kind of shoved up to the north and not really allowing these fronts to advance very, very far southeast. So that's Wednesday morning. Going to be hot, going to be dry. Thursday morning, still not much change. High pressure in control, still warm, still dry, kind of holding everything back here to the north and to the west. So continued almost probably record high temperatures come Wednesday and Thursday. We get into Friday and see it just kind of, we just stay in this pattern. High pressure to the south, continuing to kind of keep that warm, hot air kind of over us, very, very dry, keeping all the weather systems to our north and west. You do see a pretty good system here coming into the middle part of the country with maybe a good chance of some snow, maybe even a little bit of severe weather out ahead of that. That's on Friday. But for us, just this high pressure is going to dominate. Even into Saturday, here to Saturday, you still see that high pressure kind of dominating, but you are starting to see that stronger system coming across the Great Lakes and pushing into parts of Indiana and Missouri, and Illinois. So it's coming towards us. It's just going to take a little while to get here. So Saturday still looks fine. Sunday, we'll have to see what happens. By Sunday, that strong cold front does start to make its way, into the Commonwealth, makes its way across the area. So we'll see if that can bring any chance for showers, maybe late weekend and early next week. It's going to be a strong cold front, so that should start to bring temperatures at least back down to normal after what's going to be a pretty hot week this week. And by Monday of next week, high pressure, which we originated up in Canada, is going to be building south. So that's going to be high pressure, a little bit cooler high pressure system for early next week. So maybe a return back to some normal cool weather by late weekend and really more like next week. So stay tuned. But this week, basically going to be pretty hot and going to be really, really dry. So this is our increased fire danger for today, mainly for those southwest winds about 15 to 20 miles per hour. Humidity about 25 to 35%. So these aren't really low values, but given how dry it is, we got to be careful with some ignition sources. Things could actually start pretty quickly, just given how dry the fuels are, as well as just how dry the humidity is going to be, in addition to maybe just a little bit of wind during the day. And it's primarily going to be mainly along and west of I-95. You do see we brought it over here towards Tappahannock, but the humidity is a little bit higher in the east, and that's why you don't see us having the increased fire danger in the east, even though it's breezy. So everybody just kind of needs to be on their guard a little bit with the fire danger. And this is just showing you kind of the hour by hour, some of the minimum afternoon humidities combined with the wind. So you do see the wind does decrease this evening, but we do keep some gust around, I'd say 15 to 25 miles per hour, really through a good bit of the day. And then you kind of got to line up your humidity. So places like Farmville, getting below 35%. Same thing with Emporia, obviously up towards Bowling Green, where Chesapeake's getting close. See down there in southeastern Virginia, getting right to 35%. That's kind of our trigger for that increased fire danger. So it's borderline in places like Chesapeake. Same thing down here in Suffolk, getting that humidity down around 33% and still a bit breezy. So even though we don't have the increased fire danger there in some of those areas, you're going to have to kind of watch out for the day. Even Elizabeth City, that minimum humidity getting right above 35% and still going to be pretty, off and on, maybe a little bit breezy. So we're just going to have to watch out for that. But the biggest threat really is, across central Virginia and across the Piedmont. Doesn't mean we couldn't see fire pop up here or there with an ignition source, even outside the fire danger. Just realize those conditions do exist today with the really driest conditions really across the Piedmont and across central Virginia. This is kind of just looking at it for the next few days, so I kind of get an idea of what the fire threat might be here. So obviously today we have the really low humidities, and notice how the low humidities continue tomorrow with those minimum humidities getting around 30 to 35%. But the difference is for tomorrow and Wednesday, even though we have the low humidities, which I've highlighted here in yellow, notice how the winds are a bit lighter. Today we have a little bit more wind because of that pressure gradient. Where the next couple of days, still going to be a little bit of a breeze. We could see a fire pop up here or there given the dryness and the fact that it is getting hot. So different ignition sources could get something going, but we do have less wind over the next couple of days. So it probably won't be right, we probably won't have increased fire dangers the next couple of days. We'll coordinate with the Forest Service and see what they would like to do. But the threat's not as great as far as the wind, but the threat does still continue as far as how dry it's going to be with the humidity. And obviously, when it gets this hot, these fuels are drying out, so things are getting pretty crispy. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that. And again, we're just kind of reiterating the burn bans that are in effect across North Carolina and Virginia, that these burn bans keep going on. Looking for rainfall, we're just not really seeing much. Obviously, on the left-hand side, rainfall going all the way through Wednesday night, there's nothing. That Thursday night through Sunday night, this is that front that's going to try to sneak through. So maybe as that front late Sunday evening starts to approach, I-95 and parts of the Piedmont and east, maybe we can spark off a few little scattered showers, maybe even a thunderstorm. But there's not a lot of moisture here to work with right now. So it's probably going to be very hit or miss. Notice that you're only seeing like 1/10 of an inch of rain, so we'll see what happens. But this Sunday on rain, this rain Sunday is not going to be a big beneficial rain event. It's just going to be as the front comes through, we might pop up a few showers, a thunderstorm. It might rain somewhere very briefly, and then it's kind of over. So this is not going to be something that's really going to be a big wetting rainfall for us, unfortunately. But it is our next chance of rain there on Sunday. The drought does continue to expand. In fact, statewide, we have a lot of severe drought. You can kind of see here just for our forecast area, but most of the state is well within the severe drought category. And so there you hear in yellow is just where we saw some higher rain amounts there, and that's been a couple weeks ago now. So things are starting to get pretty crispy really across the entire region. But most of the Commonwealth is in a severe drought now at this point. Looking at the temperatures, kind of going ahead, we kind of already alluded to this, the fact that, today we're pretty much in the 80s, but then if you look by Tuesday, we're starting to see a lot of areas flirting with 90, and then really Wednesday, Thursday, we're talking about mid 90s in a lot of places. So really going to be warm, going to be some record high afternoon temperatures most likely. Overnight lows, getting into the 60s, maybe around 70. So again, going to be really, really, really mild. And those warm temperatures, continue even into Saturday. So we're going to be into a pretty prolonged warm spell here. And then that front comes through sometime on Sunday. So slightly cooler here on Sunday, depending on what time the front comes through. But the lows Monday morning, you can really see that temperature drop. So at least that's getting, normally a normal kind of level of coolness, right? So we're not quite as hot. So you see those Monday morning temperatures pretty much in the 40s and low 50s. And of course, the Monday high temperature will be cooler than what we experienced over the weekend. But that shows you that cool shot of air that is coming in. It's really not until late Sunday evening and into Monday morning when we get that cool shot of air. So going to be very warm up until that point. Chances of rain you see right now are really pretty low. Sunday, I think most of the day stays dry. Maybe Sunday evening, early Monday morning. Right now we've only got 25 to 30% chances of rain in the forecast. So we'll see if that goes up at all. But right now it's just not looking like a big rain event for us. Just a chance of rain with some cooler temperatures. And these are kind of some of the record highs that we'll be playing with here across the area. So, Richmond, pretty much, between 90 to 93 degrees. Same thing in Norfolk, upper 80s to around 91. Up in Salisbury, Maryland, pretty much upper 80s. And Elizabeth City, pretty much sitting there in the low 90s. So we'll be making a run at all these temperatures, these daily highs, basically starting tomorrow. And some of these I would expect some of these records to be broken. But these are the records highs for this time of year at the different cities. Looking out beyond this, even though we do have the cold front coming down, it's going to cool things off briefly. It does look like we'll get back up into a warm up after that. So, when you start looking out to April 20th to 26th, a little bit further out in time, there is a better signal that the temperatures will remain at least above normal for a lot of the U.S., including our region. And as far as precipitation, I'd say pretty much near to below normal, probably most likely below normal. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of precipitation coming anytime soon. So it does look like this trend for, temperatures above normal, maybe a little bit drier than normal is going to continue here, at least for the next couple of weeks. So we'll see how that changes. But right now it looks like we are kind of in this overall warm and dry pattern for a while. Shifting gears on the marine side, we did kind of allude to this because of a little bit more of a pressure gradient today, more area here in orange, which suggests that you might see some small craft advisory conditions. And we do have small craft advisories in effect for the bay and the rivers for today. You don't see any orange on the map really for Tuesday or Wednesday. So, just a little bit of a light breeze, southwest breeze, maybe getting up to about 15 knots, but not going to be small craft advisory conditions. Winds pick up offshore, maybe a teeny bit here Thursday night, a little bit of a breeze, but not much. And you see even here for Friday night, even not much yellow on the map. So not a real big concern on the marine side of the house. These are the peak wind gusts, really kind of gearing more what's going to happen today. That's kind of the strongest wind we're going to be experiencing really is going to be today. So maybe some gusts to 20 to 25 knots. And that's why we have those small craft advisories in effect for mainly the bay and the rivers. Notice how, tomorrow we don't have quite as much wind out of the southwest, and Wednesday is even a little bit lighter, just some south winds, maybe gusting up to 15 knots. Winds pick up a little bit there on Thursday, but then by the time you get into Friday, the winds fall back off again, and then we'll wait for that front to come through on Sunday. And notice how the winds do remain south the entire week. All these arrows are pointing from south to north, so we keep that kind of south to southwest wind really all week. And in fact, you really don't see the wind shift here. You kind of see the wind shift here. Look at the sustained wind and the wind gusts going over the course all the way through the weekend. You kind of notice those wind barbs, those winds start to change sometime, I'd say between 12 and 6. So it's going to be sometime in the afternoon when that front tries to sneak through here. But I think for most of us, it's not going to really sneak through until later in the afternoon and evening there on Sunday. So going to maintain that south wind, I think, for a good bit of the day there on Sunday, maybe picking up to about 20 to 25 knots potentially because of the right ahead of that front. The winds might pick up a little bit out of the south, and then that front will push through sometime later Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening. And then we might get a little bit of surge, which is not in the forecast here, but might get a little bit of a surge with the northwest wind gusting there for early Monday morning. And so we'll brief that out maybe a little bit later. As far as wave heights go, pretty typical of what you see with maybe some gusty southwest winds, basically running about 3 to 5 feet, depending on where you are. The bay is probably mainly about 1 to 3 feet, depending on your location. And off the coast, a little bit lower seas near shore, but you push out there a good distance, and you're probably going to be getting into about 4 to 5 foot seas and running up the whole eastern shore there with that south to southwest wind. I mean, that's mainly going to persist through today and this evening. And with the decreasing wind for especially Wednesday, Thursday, you notice the waves in the seas are a bit lower. So really nothing to be concerned about here. Just a typical wind and sea state that we see with the southwest winds. One thing that we do hope that starts this week, we're going to be implementing kind of some new changes. So this is mainly on the marine side. But the big change for us is that if all goes as planned, starting on the 16th, we will be actually providing local forecasts all the way out to 60 nautical miles offshore. So right now, the local office here only forecasts out to about 20 nautical miles, and the Ocean Prediction Center takes over beyond that. But hopefully starting late this week, if all does go well, we will be forecasting all the way out to 60 nautical miles, which will actually reach Norfolk Canyon and almost out to Baltimore Canyon. So we'll have all these coastal waters out here that we'll be forecasting for locally. So stay tuned to that. You may see some new slides being added to our briefing, some new data points being added as we put a few points here offshore to kind of highlight what some of the marine conditions might be if folks are pushing out a little bit further, past the wind farm and out here towards Norfolk Canyon. And with that, I appreciate everybody hanging in today.